When the Salvation Army asked me to introduce this film, I immediately said yes. Indeed, I counted it an honor to do so for the man whose life it celebrates. Dudley John Gardner is a man whom I had the privilege of seeing at work in Calcutta, holding back the hand of death, giving hope to some of the many starving in that great yet terrifying city. All for 15 years on the trot without a single day off. Dudley Gardner is a man to whom what he has means nothing. What he can give means everything. You'll gather from all of this that I found him an inspiring man to meet. Dudley John Gardner. I know you're going to find him an inspiring man to meet now.
In this country, the welfare system is very different to what it is in other countries. For instance, there is no dole, as we know in other countries. If a man is out of work with a large family, he has no redress other than to sell whatever property he has or go around trying to get himself odd jobs, but never enough to keep his wife and his family in any decency. So what we try to do is to provide one good meal a day, so that the man knows that at least his family are not going to starve.
In 1922, as a boy of 12, Dudley John Gardner first came to Calcutta. Because of the movement away from the land into the cities, because of refugees and the population explosion, in his time the population has doubled and redoubled, until now it equals that of London. Accommodation is scarce, 7,000 people to every square mile. There are 750,000 without shelter of any kind, living on rooftops and pavements. The inability of the economy to sustain the population means that unemployment and poverty are inevitable and everywhere. There is also malnutrition, disease, high birth rate, high infant mortality, and apathy. There's also tomorrow, but that may only be worse than today. But there is also Dudley John Gardner.
I spent a large part of my life as a soldier, and I've now spent 15 years in another army, the Salvation Army, and I think, even taking my years as a POW, I think I've enjoyed myself much as a soldier, but in the last 15 years, I think I've been more content than I've ever been before.
Since 1958, he's run a feeding program as one of the several social services organized by the Salvation Army. His compassion is disciplined and well organized. You'd expect that from a professional soldier. He's also part of a team. A social worker investigates the need of everyone who asks for help. Always there are applications. But there's a difference between being hungry and starving. And this program is for the desperate. This early morning queue is not for food, but for medicine. The Salvation Army Clinic provides free medical treatment, and some of these patients have queued for a long time.
I will see in a minute.
A handful of doctors have a massive disease-prone city on their hands. Grossly overworked, they're forced by blind economic and social forces to select only the worst and most urgent cases for treatment.
Nice straight line, they make it nice and easy for me. Thank you, thank you.
Army habits die hard. But an orderly queue is not only tidier, it does make for greater efficiency. A Salvation Army officer nurse from New Zealand identifies the most needy and gives them priority. Gardner picks up, hopefully, a piece of India's future, identifying himself with the whole social program of the centre. He became a social worker late in life, after his retirement as a British Army officer.
When the war broke out in the East, we with our Indian troops were drafted to Malaya, where we stayed for about 9 months. Then the insurgents were so heavy coming in from the Pacific that we had to leave and retreat into Burma. Whilst in Burma, we were captured by the Japanese. The Japanese advanced from Malaya and came to Burma, and myself with about thousands of Australian and native troops, we were all imprisoned for a period of 3.5 years. At the end of the 3.5 years, I was released and suddenly discovered that back home, my father had been killed fighting the Germans in Tunisia, and my mother had died with runaway bombing escapade just outside Southampton. She was bombed. After rehabilitation in Calcutta, I went back to England and sorted a few financial problems out left by my parents and felt very, very dejected, very, very depressed, and came back to India. I've had very little to do with Great Britain since then. During my last 3 or 4 years in the service, I always wondered what I would do when I finally left the service. And during those later years, I was involved in many social problems in the military. So I thought it would be a good idea to slip into social work. I had spent so many years in wars, and I realized that the only people who prospered in wars were warring parties, and the people who suffered most were the civilians. So I thought I would try and work on the civilian side. So when I came to Calcutta, I had many friends in Calcutta. I'd been here many times in the military. I met up with some Salvation Army friends, and we started this project with 55 people in a social service centre in the Lower Circular Road. From that, we have built our program up to what it is now, nearly 5,800 people.
Children are not only the most tragic victims of war, they're among the first to suffer even in peacetime. In the poorer countries, a high mortality among children under 5 is generally the result of malnutrition. A curable disease, even a common illness, may be fatal in children who are thin and undernourished. Old people are also vulnerable, living on borrowed time. The life expectancy is less than half that in Western countries. Their health under constant threat from their overcrowded conditions, poor hygiene, and insufficient food. While the clinic functions, Gardner checks the food in the storeroom. Compelled by the compassion and personal magnetism of this man, individuals and churches and relief organizations from all parts of the world send gifts of money and food. Porridge and macaroni seem strangely unfamiliar in this part of the world, but new tastes are no problem when people are hungry.
So I have to make up a diet with whatever stuff is available. 3 times a week we use vegetable. Once upon a time we used to use vegetables purchased in the market daily, but finances will not allow that now. It means a saving of nearly 100 rupees a day. But other days we have chicken and potato mash, sometimes raisin and porridge, sometimes tomato sauce and potatoes, anything that we have available. And in everything we put vitamin powder. We don't put it every day, we put it probably about 2 or 3 times a week, otherwise the children will get scratchy and break out in sores and all that sort of thing. But what we give them is a very good diet. Most of the food stuff is prepared, especially for depressed areas. Consequently, they don't have to eat a lot of it before they are satisfied, and that is a great thing with children. It appeases hunger, it stops them crying at night, makes them go to sleep quicker. And we have a very large consignment of Swiss full cream powdered milk, which came to us by courtesy of the Salvation Army in Switzerland. got enough potato, Peter?
Calcutta is the headquarters of all the Salvation Army's work in northeast India. A meeting under the chairmanship of the territorial commander receives regular reports on the feeding program. The committee is responsible for channeling the funds which keep Dudley Gardner's program alive. It also provides the overall administration necessary in a project of this size. Every applicant for the feeding program is interviewed, preferably in his own room. A widow left destitute by the death of her husband needs help. Traditionally, the security of the aged comes from their families, but close family ties are often broken in the change from an agricultural society to an industrial one. This woman's family is widely scattered. She may find them. She may return to her own village. But in the meantime, she has no money to buy food. The ticket that the social worker signs guarantees her 1 meal a day for 3 months. This will give her time to make plans. Meanwhile, the ticket is her passport to survival.
127.
Those who live within walking distance of the centre come in the middle of the day to have their meal. A ticket check at the gate separates the starving from the hungry. Mothers collect food for their families. Men who sleep out on the streets at night come not only for food, but for 1 hour's refuge out of the 24. Even those without a pass wait hopefully outside.
250.
This project was started in the city in 1958. It was a Salvation Army project of feeding people. They were searching for volunteers to try and get the program organized. Mrs. Bath, wife of the OC, was about to do the project herself, but was suddenly taken ill and was looking for somebody to do it. So I came along and filled in that place. And from that very, very meager beginning, we have blossomed into a large family of 5,800 people. And I'll always remember Captain Bath, as he was then, saying to me, "Gardner, if you're going to start this program, don't forget it is 7 days a week, because people eat 7 days a week." And I said, "All right, I'll try." And God has been very good to us. It's kept me going now for 15 years. I haven't so far missed a day. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Looking more beautiful.
Milk is given out with every plate of food. Mothers take it home to their children.
We have people on for 6 months, 12 months, and in the middle of the project they disappear. And we find that they've got a job. And they come back to the centre and they say, "Here is my card. Thank you very much for helping us for so long. We have now got a job, and please feed somebody else who's more needed than us." It's very gratifying when that happens. Thank you.
These people are outside the feeding program. Most have received help from Gardner before having been replaced by someone more needy. Now all can enter to help clear the pot.
Calcutta has been very unfortunate over the years. It's a small city in size, but it has a very, very large population. And most of these people have come into the city over the years, not recently, from other states and from other countries, seeking employment. Now, you cannot tell these people that it is best for them to stay in their village and live in their village and work in their village. They do not believe that. They think that every street in Calcutta is paved with gold, and they come here searching for work. They can't find work. They sell all their goods and chattels to keep themselves alive. Then they have no money to get back to their own country or their own state, and consequently stay here. They breed children here, and the population gets larger and larger. So we have a terrific employment problem. The Corporation of Calcutta works magnificently to try and solve this problem, but it's a colossal task for any corporation or any government to tackle, owing to the vast amount of people.
The men are also given milk, part of a carefully planned diet to build up their strength. A manual worker must be fit enough to take on a full day's work when it's offered to him. The regulars have found their own places to sit, like this old lady who's blind and prefers to sit by herself on the floor. There's a story behind every face. This man, an Anglo-Indian, lost his job. Soon afterwards, his wife became ill and died. He was left with 2 young children to support.
There's so many things that have to be got for them and things like that, and I didn't have the money to do it. I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, as a matter of fact. And thrown out of my house, couldn't pay the rent. I had to leave. So I was just sleeping on the pavements. I didn't even have proper bedding at that time, and it was really, really hard. Then I remembered Major Gardner, and I'd heard so much about him, and I thought, well, I'd no harm in going to see him. So I came down here and I saw Major Gardner, and I asked him if he could fix me up with the food which he usually gives out, distributes free. He was very, very nice, and he put me on his rolls and gave me a card. He told me that I could come in for a hot meal every afternoon. And I must say that was a real blessing. That one good meal in the afternoon made a world of a difference.
Dudley Gardner is halfway through his day and needs a break. He ought to retire and rest, as many a man would have done, of course. His legs have become infected by a disease called filaria, which causes painful swelling and inflammation of the skin. Bathing the legs and putting on fresh ointment and bandages bring a measure of relief.
Be as quick as you can, Betsy, because you've got other work to do. I want to get out if I can. That's nice. Thanks, Betsy. Okay.
In the meantime, more meals have been prepared in the kitchens. This time, the brimful dixies are loaded into a jeep. It's the start of an incredible journey, the food run. I shared it with Dudley Gardner one day, but he's done it every day for the past 15 years. Within the next 5 hours, people all over the city will have meals delivered to within a short distance of where they live. The greatest need, of course, is in the poorer areas of a poor city, in the back streets and the slums, in what are known locally as the Busties.
A bustey area is a conglomeration of buildings, all tightly packed together with a road going in between. Made of mud and bamboo and slate roofs. They are packed together in little alleyways, one-room buildings, like sheds. In these buildings, whole families and groups of people live. Sometimes as many as 8 or 9 people in a room 10 foot by 8 foot. There is no electricity, there is no water facilities, and there's no sanitation whatsoever. All that is outside.
There is nothing to distinguish a stop except a small gathering of people with their metal pots to carry food, their hope, and their gratitude. Dudley Gardner has established food stops at street corners all over the city. At some of them, I noticed he feeds as many as 100 people. At another, I saw him feeding just a crippled boy who lives on top of a heap of refuse, or a lady who's married to a leper who cannot move.
People are always asking me how I feel about going out every day as I do on the food run. Do I think that maybe people will die, will suffer immensely if I don't go out on the food run? To me, the food run is different every day. I get intense enjoyment out of feeding the people. Every day something different happens. And I meet people, problems arise with children. Some have too much food, some have not enough food, some are missing and I have to go and search for them. Every day has its little events. And all the time I'm het up to know what is happening, whether I've fed everybody and so forth. Not until I get back to my room about 8 o'clock at night when I sort of unwind like a clock, shut all the doors and think carefully, do I realise what we've done during the day? And I feel very, very gratified. Sure. Go. Oh, hi, Sydney. Hi, Abby. Eko, nej, baba nej man ser du. Som alla märker det här. Good. Hello, butcher. Hey. Är du här? Butcher, Abigail.
The next halt is different from the rest. On his drive across the city, Gardner parks outside a large office block, the headquarters of several big companies. The staff canteen is situated halfway up the building. An arrangement with the caterers has resulted in the day's surplus of food being handed over to Dudley Gardner. There's usually curry and a few binfuls of rice.
Empty those tins, Gary. The tins are half full. Hurry up. Yeah. All right?
There are still another 20 stops to make before the run is finished. At each one there'll be a group of people waiting, estimating the time from the sun, listening to the hungry cries of the children. But at last, the familiar sound of the Jeep as it approaches. The Major is nearly an hour late, but he's never let them down yet. This is the last stop of all. Some of them have had nothing to eat since the day before. It'll be another 24 hours before they eat again.
Yeah, you got enough to eat. You're happy with that? Good. Bye-bye. Good.
It is said there are two angels in Calcutta. One is this huge man with a bushy beard. The other a small, unassuming woman called Mother Teresa.
Major Gardner is known in Calcutta as the father of the poor. And whenever there's been suffering and distress and hunger in the city or around the city, he's always been there. And with his love, with his kindness. And I think if he had not been there, many more people would have had to suffer and die. But his total surrender in the service of the people has brought so much joy and peace and happiness into many lives.
The last dixie is emptied. A woman fetches water so that he can wash his hands.
To run a project like this costs money. We are feeding nearly 6,000 people every day, and to do that we have to find nearly 450 rupees. I have thrown most of my war gratuities into this, and I'm throwing my pension into this, but it's not really enough. I rely on two very strong legs, which I have, one in England, one in Australia. The Church of Our Lady of the Wayside in Solihull, Warwickshire, are very, very good to me and provide nearly half of this money to keep the project going. Then I have the Bentley Corps in Australia. Then I have hundreds of people all around the world who are very kind to me and send me donations large and small to keep the project going. But it's not enough. We want more money.
"2100 hours. Dudley John Gardner's day is nearly over. Tomorrow, God willing, he'll begin all over again.